1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Byron Henry joins us tonight. He is an attorney, an appellate partner in the firm of Scheef and Stone. And good to have you with us tonight, Mr. Henry.
My pleasure.
Let's start, first of all, with your thoughts on what the administration has done and the overall reaction to it.
Well, let's first clarify a couple points about this. The first and foremost thing everyone, I think, should remember from a legal standpoint is, not a political standpoint, but a legal standpoint, is that the Constitution does not give any person other than citizens of this country the right to visit the country, the right to work in the country, the right to vacation in this country, to go to school in this country, at all. There's no constitutional implications with respect to the ability to come to our country. That is completely given, directed to Congress as plenary authority over immigration matters and control of the borders, and they have delegated a significant, and I say significant meaning a tremendous amount of discretion to the Department of Homeland Security under President Donald Trump, or the President of the United States, whoever that may be. So that's the first point. The second point to consider is that the real confusion, so to speak, over the weekend was really about those who are in transit or in airports. And I don't know what the final number. I've read reports that it's anywhere from 200 to 400 people, somewhere in there, that were detained because technically they were caught by that order and they were coming into this country, but they weren't here yet, and so they fell under the executive order that President Trump signed. So that needs to sort itself out, and what judges did over the weekend was simply enter a restraining order, keeping those people from being returned to their home countries because they had already landed here until the courts could have a hearing and sort it out. So that's kind of what things are on the ground. There hasn't been any orders that I'm aware of actually saying that President Trump lacks the authority, the legal authority, to push pause on visas and H-1Bs and other basically discretionary travel to this country for 90 days. In fact, there's some statutes out there that seem to give him the authority.
Absolutely. The McCarran-Walter Act of 1952, which was used by President Carter during the Iranian hostage crisis.
Exactly. So really what we have here is I believe, not an unprecedented move. In fact, the 7 countries that are on the list are actually designated countries of specific concern with respect to terrorism.
That was designated under the Obama administration, if I'm not mistaken.
That's exactly right. So he didn't pick these names out of a hat. It was expedient because President Trump does not have to follow President Obama's methods and implementation of congressional law with respect to immigration, and he doesn't have to follow President Bush's or President Reagan's, anyone. He's the president, and he gets to decide within his discretion and under the law, of course, how he implements the programs that Congress has given him discretion over, and he wants to push the pause button and have a review of these programs and make sure that they're being done in a way that protects first and foremost the safety of the citizens of the United States, and secondly, as he said numerous times, that will extend a helping hand to all those in need once we make sure that there's been proper vetting and it's safe.
Although I think it is important to note that while you're quite correct regarding the fact that this discretion extends from president to president, and now we currently have only one, and his name is not Barack Obama, but in point of fact, as you noted, Barack Obama also acted in this direction. There was the 6-month travel ban that had to do with refugees from Iraq that was instituted back in 2011 by this administration. It did note the very same 7 countries as hotbeds of terrorism. So as you note, when all of that happened, there were no massive protests in the streets. It's only when Donald Trump is acting in this way that suddenly people get a wild hair.
Well, let's go even more recent, Jim. Let's talk about the fact that right before he left office, he basically issued an executive order rescinding the wet foot, dry foot policy that had extended to Cuban refugees for years and years. So basically you had people probably on the water trying to set foot in the United States, and whether they were 90% here or had just left the coast of Cuba and risking life and limb to come to the United States, these people were turned away at the border because at the shore because President Obama signed an executive order reversing a decades-old policy which allowed people, refugees from Cuba, to remain in the United States if they could make it here safely. And so I didn't see any protests with respect to the men, women, and children that were trying to flee a dictatorial, brutal regime in Cuba to any photos or protests or lawyers taking flights down to Cuba to help those people. So while I believe that refugees do need to be helped, and this country could never be accused of not extending a helping hand to refugees or other countries, since we probably spend more in aid to other countries in our budget than most of the Western world combined. So I don't think heartless is a good way to describe the United States. But I think Donald Trump made it clear in the campaign, and he was elected on this platform, that he was going to take a new look at the way these things are being handled and put America's safety and the safety of its citizens and well-being first, and then look at all the other implications of his program. So,
yeah, and I would also...
No one should be surprised.
Yeah, I would take note of something else as well, and that is that regarding the Cubans coming to this country, there was not a significant subset of that group which was trying to kill Americans, blow up buildings, and what have you. Likewise, I've heard commentary this past day from some who compared this to the United States turning aside Jewish refugees from the Holocaust. There was not, within Jewish refugees, a significant subset of those who were trying to blow up anything that is Western and civilized. And if you do not make the distinction here between those groups and other such groups and this group, which unfortunately, but it's a reality of life, unfortunately includes a significant subset of people who are in fact out to do just what I outlined, then you cannot make that comparison.
Well, not only is the comparison ludicrous to try to say that it's the same as turning away families from Cuba, as far as I know, we have not been in a war on terror that included Cuba in that list. Now, certainly Cuba is on the short list of countries that are not in good with the State Department. Of course, President Obama lifted sanctions, or some of them recently. But the bottom line is, when you're talking about Iran and other countries in the Middle East, Libya, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Sudan, Yemen, and those other countries, there's a reason they're on the list of presidents from both parties. Whether it's President George W. Bush and his Axis of Evil, or it's President Obama and his State Department placing these countries on the list with respect to concerns about terrorism. There's a reason that it's bipartisan with respect to these countries, and I think that should be taken into consideration. And, of course, what is also not being reported is that Donald Trump has said that this is not a move to cut the number of overall refugees overall that is the average amount that's been let into the United States through George W. Bush's and President Obama's administration, which hovers around 50 to 60,000 a year. President Trump has said it's going to be about 50,000. And he's also said this is not a move to cut back the number of work visas and student visas that are available to countries. It is simply a time to push pause and reevaluate the vetting process, especially from these specific countries, and make sure we're doing it right, and not just to basically let people in so we can ask questions later type scenario. And that I think is what Donald Trump is most concerned with.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get in from those countries already. Let me make that clear. You already have to pass a vetting process. It's not like they're waving them in, but Donald Trump has said, I'm going to review it myself. And I'm going to make sure it meets with my standards for the safety of the American people. And
exactly.
The United States,
we're going to pause. We're going to pause briefly, and we'll continue with more of our discussion again with our guest in this portion of the program. He is an attorney, Byron Henry, who works with the firm of Scheef and Stone, offering some of his thoughts about the system that has been placed in our immigration processing. And we'll come back and talk some more at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show as we look at what President Trump has done, and I think more importantly what he has not done. A lot of the criticism that has been aimed at him, in particular that coming from former President Obama, falls under the category of specious at best, and, well, in my view, outright distortion, deliberate, it would be my take. At worst, Attorney Byron Henry is our guest in this portion of the program, and we're talking also with Denise in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey. Hello, Denise.
Hi. I have to say one thing. I'm pretty much a relatively intelligent person, 67-year-old Army veteran, and I need somebody to explain to me why people are comparing my grandparents who came here in 1900, who didn't fly planes into buildings, with people who are coming into this country who are a big question mark?
Oh, I can give you the short answer. It's because they just desperately want to, because there are some people out there who are desperately trying to flout their alleged moral superiority, and this is one of the few ways they can think of to do it. In their warped view of the world, we're all just one giant hold hands and sing kumbaya society on this planet, and it upsets their whole world view, Denise, to even admit that there are such serious, and in this case, fascistic subsets of humanity. That would be the short answer. Byron Henry, what's your thoughts?
Well, Jim, I think you hit kind of the nail on the head there. It's basically this idea that somehow when the United States does things in its own interest to protect itself, to assert itself, to win economically, to win militarily, to win that somehow that is somehow either against our values, meaning that that's not the way America works.
Yeah.
And that America is in its own way different than other countries. So there's just an idea in this, in one side of the political debate that does not believe America is in any way superior in people, in system, in its values, in how the country was founded, in what we fought for, and what we've given for the world, not just for our own country, and another group of people that believes it is. And when you bring America down to the level of every other country, in other words, we have a seat on the United Nations, and we are no better than Cuba, we are in no better position than any other country, it kind of distorts a lot of the views that come out of that in policy decisions. It makes sense if you think of it that way, that we don't have any right to tell these people they can't come here. There's a war in their country. They need a place to go. We have money. We have resources. Why can't they just come here? Why can't we just pay for them? And that kind of thinking pervades, I think, a lot on the left today. It's not always been that way, but that is the way. Yeah. And part of it is just they don't like President Trump, and since President Trump initiated this action, it's basically that even multiplies the effect if they're against this action because it's President Trump.
Exactly. I'll give you a very short version here, Denise, and we'll go to the next call. And that is liberal speaking, and another person, a guy walks into the room and says, I think all gays should be executed and women are chattel. Women should be treated as property. And the first person, a liberal, says, what? Why, you filthy fascist Republican. And the first person says, no, actually, I'm an Islamist Muslim. And then the liberal says, I'm terribly sorry. Have I offended you? There, in a nutshell, says about all you need to know about this discussion. Helene in Inglewood, Florida. You're on the Jim Bohannon Show with our guest. Hi there.
Good evening. Boy, things keep happening. Hey, I'm all for keeping people safe in America. That's why I'm against drunk driving that claims 8,000 lives a year in this country. But to Mr. Henry, when you say that both administrations had the same policy, do you think that the big hoopla now that is occurring resulted as a result of Mr. Trump saying he wanted a ban on Muslims and he would allow, I don't know if he said only Christians, or he wanted to have...
He wanted to give preference to Christians. Like so much of what Donald Trump, the candidate, and now Donald Trump, the president, has said, Byron Henry, it has to do with the fact that he blurts a lot and then he walks back his original statements. So I'd like our guest to respond to you, Helene.
Well, first of all, of course, tweets and campaign slogans aren't policy. They matter because they came from the mouth of the person that became president. But I don't believe that President Obama and President Trump's policies were the same. My point is that President Obama took executive action in areas of immigration in his discretion, and his State Department listed these same countries as countries of concern, specific concern with respect to exporting terrorism.
And you can remember all the protests that occurred, right? Because there weren't any.
There were not any. But Donald Trump's policy, President Trump's policy, is not the same policy. This is different. This is a stay of, it's basically a travel ban, a visa ban, a refugee ban for 90 days to do an investigation. It's an indefinite ban on Syrian refugees, and it's basically a reset of our immigration policy from the Middle East until President Trump gets a handle on how he wants to implement Congress's the law with respect to immigration
Exactly.
from these specific countries.
So it's not the same policy, but it is certainly, it points out the fact that the former President Obama has done some of the same types of things and received no protests whatsoever. So part of this reaction is to the fact that Donald Trump did it. Fred in Sioux City, Iowa, good evening.
Hey, Jim, how are you?
We're fine, thank you.
Yeah, I've been listening to all this extravaganza and that. You know, when I was a young man, Jim, raising babies, I think 3 of them there all the time, I didn't have time to worry about where the bananas I was eating was coming from. I didn't get all bent out of shape, you know, but, you know. People
I'm not sure what the importation of bananas has to do with the conversation, but what point are we getting at here, Fred?
I wasn't worried about where the people were coming from that were coming into our country, but all of a sudden, now I'm 70 years old. It's a big, terrible thing.
Well, maybe we weren't so worried because we did not have until in the past few decades a significant subset of people coming here for the express purpose of killing us. That might explain why all of us have become somewhat more aware of such people.
My main point is 2 things. I've seen them signs on people's bumper stickers for a long time. 9/11, 9/11, never forget. And it seems to me that we have forgot. And when you think about those 3,000 dead people and those 2 buildings come roaring down, we have forgot. And it makes perfect sense to, you know, vet people coming into the country.
Yes, it absolutely does. We're coming up on a break here that doesn't move, so I appreciate your call, and more to come at 1-866-50-JIMBO. And our guest, by the way, Attorney Byron Henry, please stay on the line. We have a very quick off-air interview that we will conduct. Again, 1-866-50-JIMBO is our number, 1-866-505-4626. We're looking at President Trump's temporary block on immigration from 7 countries. We'll be back with more in just a moment.